It's incredibly simple, very forgiving, and I couldn't call myself the French home cook without showing you how to make French baguette. All imperial measurements are in the description down below. We're gonna start with a bowl in which we're gonna deposit 450 grams of bread flour. All-purpose would also work just fine. Next, I'll make a little well in the middle of the flour and deposit 315 grams of water inside. This will give you a 70% hydration dough, but don't worry, we won't have any sticky, doughy fingers by any point of the process. Round about 7 grams or 1 pack of instant dry yeast goes into the water, and I don't care what people claim on the internet, adding salt at this stage will manifestly not kill your yeast. That was about 2 tablespoons, but you'll have to experiment a little bit what you like. Next, I'll just grab my trusty spoon, my all-purpose weapon of choice in the kitchen, and mix everything together. It is autolysis, the process of hydrating the starch particles that will bring this the rest of the way. I'll leave my spoon in, cover the bowl, and let it hydrate anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour depending on what other chores I have that day. The starch particles will hydrate, the yeast will give a first puff of gas and flavor, and the gluten will essentially develop itself. This is what my dough looks like after about 35 minutes, and now my goal is to give it another cursory mix to knock out any big air bubbles and give the yeast fresh starch to eat. Very roughly form this into a ball-ish shape, and we're done with the spoon. Cover and place in the fridge. Leo, why aren't you using your stand mixer? He looks sad. Well, I'm guessing you don't have a stand mixer, and I'm trying to make the recipe as accessible for anyone as I can. The dough can cold ferment for up to a week in the fridge, and on the morning of or the day of baking, I prep my oven by placing the rack in the middle and one tray very close to the bottom. You'll see why we need that. Preheat my oven to as hot as it goes on convection. My highest temp is 250 Celsius, 480 freedom temp, supposedly, but anything in that ballpark will work and convection isn't a must. The great thing about baguette, as opposed to other high hydration doughs, is that it's very forgiving. I can work it with flour and it will not ruin the texture one bit. After having spread some flour on my workstation and a little bit on my hands, I scrape the dough out of the bowl using nothing but quick motions and my fingertips. Dust the top with flour and start flattening the dough to deflate it and make it easier to shape later. Once it's flat, I roughly find the middle and cut the dough in half. This process better go quicker than me adjusting the camera angle every few seconds, otherwise it will stick a little bit, but that ain't the end of the world. Just add a little more flour and you'll be fine. Next, I'm gonna fold and stretch the dough into the roughest, ugliest rectangle I can muster. Grab the first long side and fold it into the middle. Then I fold it over one more time. Add a little flour and start rolling the dough until I get to the relative uniform thickness that I want, making sure to taper the ends a little bit to get that traditional shape. I'll show again in more detail in a second. Next, I'll prep my baking sheet with some parchment paper, lift the snake, and place it on there in a diagonal to get some extra length. Please don't edit that out of context. It's gonna be a little ugly and a little rough, but wait for it. Magic things are gonna happen. First, let's take a closer look at the shaping process. Flatten the dough and shape it into a rough rectangle shape. Then fold it over in thirds, making sure to press and seal the seams you create. Next, thinly coat it in flour and roll it until the desired length and thickness, making sure to taper the ends a little. Then place it on a parchment-lined baking sheet and tuck the sides in just a little bit to ensure it proofs upwards and not sidewards. Instructions clear? Roger that. Speaking of proofing, these are going to need another half hour to become puffy and reach their final shape, so I'll cover them with a cloth towel until they have about double in size. My oven is now rocket hot, and on the baking sheet we have placed in at the bottom earlier, I'll deposit about 300 mils or 1 large glass of water to create some steam. You'll see why we want that in a sec. You can score the baguette with anything. I use my sharpest knife, but if you don't have that, I'll show you a viable alternative in a minute. Once scored, place in the oven for about 20 minutes total. The steam will ensure a good amount of oven spring before the crust sets, which makes the bread fluffier. 15 minutes in, I carefully reach in and rotate the bread so that the bottom also gets some even color. If you're less brave or less stupid than me, you can use tongs for this. So, what if you don't have a sharp enough knife to score the bread? Well, you can simply use scissors. Whenever I do that, I like to make this cute spiky pattern. About 5 minutes after flipping, my first baguette comes out of the oven looking dashing, and before shoving in the second one, I'll fill the bottom tray with a glass of water again, since the first one has already evaporated. The second one will take about the same time. In the meantime, we need to let the fresh one rest for about 20 to 30 minutes. Right out of the oven, the crust is simply too hard and we need the moisture from the inside to soften it up a little bit. My second baguette is done and my house smells like a French bakery. I didn't press record on the taste test because I'm an idiot, but if you don't want to take my word for how amazing the simple bread tastes, try it and let me know in the comments down below how you liked it. I'll see you in the next one. À la tienne, Etienne.